Hello, and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and Town and Country Property Auctions London. Now, each week we search out the stories in the news that we think will provoke your thoughts and reactions, so please don't let us down, don't be shy, get involved and place your comments in the comments section below wherever you're watching us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff so that you can get notifications of when we go live, whenever that may be. And if you'd like to email us, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. Joining us as always, of course, our special property expert, it's Joe Joshi. Morning, Joe.
Morning, Paul, and morning to all of our viewers and listeners. Thank you for joining us. Property Matters is only as good as the interaction that you actually give us. So we look forward to all of your input. We try our best, and I know Paul really does put me out to the test week in, week out. And I've survived so far, but you never know. There will be a day.
Time to put you on the spot yet again, then, Joe. Here we go. So, first story this week is not a news story, but there's an interesting take on this, really. And as this story evolves and unwraps across this year, perspectives are changing, perhaps. Let's talk about that in more general. So, the ONS, the Office for National Statistics, has produced its latest house price index for June 2021. Average house prices increased by 13.2% over the year to June 2021. We knew it was about 9%, but that was back in May. And because of all the stamp duty activity in June, that's now rocketed to 13.2%, which is the highest annual growth rate in the UK since November 2004. The increase mainly driven by the catching up, if you want to call it that, of the Northwest, the Northeast, Wales and Yorkshire and Humber in particular. And the average house price now a record high of $266,000 in June 2021, which is £31,000 higher than this time last year. So if you have a house roughly around that sort of price, you've made 31 grand, obviously even more if you've got a larger property. So that really is quite something. But there's an interesting thing here about London, Joe, on the back of that. Lowest annual growth for the 7th consecutive month at just 6.3%. So people still moving out of the capitals or out of the cities, finding more space, but 13.2% difficult to argue with in terms of an investment potential.
Yeah, I mean, amazing, really, if you think about it. And you take that as a annual salary for the average in the United Kingdom, you could have pretty much earned the same as the growth has been there for the last year of about £31,000, give or take. Just goes to prove the point that we constantly make that, there's no better investment than your home or the property that you're looking to buy and do. And this has been unprecedented in the time of the year and the time that we've had over the last 18 months, Paul, especially with the pandemic. And you'd think that way things have been going for a lot of the industry, why is it and how is it that the housing market has done as well as it has? But there are many other reasons which we will cover as time goes on in our program today. Tremendous growth, and the point with London is that, as we've covered before, London's an international base, so it's a bit of a ripple effect from coming into. It just hasn't had the income of the people that would normally have travelled in. And what I've been hearing on the ground is the number of people that are required to fill the huge amount of vacancies that are now appearing within the capital itself. Restaurants, hospitality industry is suffering hugely with staff, because obviously during and just before the pandemic, those that left and went back home to Europe have not been able to get back to the UK because of all the ramifications of COVID testing, etc. So it's left a huge lull in the London central market. But that didn't stop the challenge for the race for space, because people were constantly still looking to move out. So the outer areas, as you rightly point out in your graphs, is growth, 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 because the people that lived in London, in the centre of London, through the pandemic time, have taken that time to rethink and re-strategize their family and their life, and decided to move to pastures new, where they're going to have more space, fresh air, etc., etc. That needs to happen now. So with that in mind, that part of the business has been doing well, but there's a certain amount of people that come into London, international people that come into London, or people come to London to work, and those are the people that we've been missing, and that's why the prices in London have been slow. But I'm sure, give it about a year or so, the conversation will be on the reverse, where things would have settled a bit more in the outer areas, and things will start to heat up more in central London. There will be a reverse, but traditionally and previously, London has always been the ripple effect. It's where it starts. It's like dropping a stone there, and then all of a sudden the ripples go out. People start to move out towards, Surrey, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, then out, into the other areas, and now because of the type of works people are doing, it's got much, much further, in fact, up to the north, giving so much more space, so much more value for money, and restructuring. And that restructuring has happened for a number of reasons, Paul. It's not just about what the pandemic's done. It's also given time people to think that, well, actually, I could sell at a certain level and achieve, look at this high prices in London or the outskirts of London, and actually almost move to the other part of the country, because my job allows me to do that now, and pay off and have no mortgages, and sometimes bought outright cash, because they just then don't have to think about having a mortgage going forward. So it's actually there's a lot of underlying issues that have actually been created by that. But the growth, I reiterate always that we gauge our wealth by the value of our home, and there it is right in front of you, black and white, 13% increase in a short space of time, and clearly makes people think about the value of why the importance of owning a home, and having that investment actually in the touchy feely see it type of thing that I talk about all the time. Whereas when you look at subjects that you can't control, stock market, stock shares, the caveat is always your investment is likely to be lost rather than your investment is likely to be still there. And homes and properties will be there. They were there before I arrived on this earth, and they'll be there after I've done my due here, and you and anybody else. And you think about hundreds and 200 and 300 4-year-old properties that people are buying. They've been there for a long, long time, and they'll be there for a long, long time to come yet.
There's been quite a lot of professional reaction to this story this week, more than you perhaps would normally expect, actually. And obviously, they're making the point that the stamp duty holiday, the house price boom, low price mortgages, the people needing to adapt to home working, and the lack of stock in the first place. But there is a suggestion that these areas, such as the northeast, the northwest, Humberside, Yorkshire, Wales, that those that have risen the fastest will also be the first to fall. What do you think about that when the cool down happens?
I wouldn't say they'd fall. I think a correction begins to happen. It's always about supply and demand. The demand has been huge. The opportunity has been huge. People have taken the opportunity, and good for them. The platform was set in unusual circumstances, unusual things that have happened in the last 18 months in all of our lives. We didn't have a plan for the pandemic. We didn't have a plan for house prices, and we didn't have a plan to sit there and move for the race for space out there. But they all happened for a reason, and how that's affected. Now, when I say that the London ripple effect will come, the London ripple effect will come in a year, 18 months' time, and some of that will still continue to affect those properties, those purchases in the outer areas, in the north and Wales, and all the areas that have done doing well and have done. but they may not have the growth as quickly because there will be a settling time. And there always is a settling time. If you go back in history to the number of times house prices have shot up, circumstances have done. So if you look at, for example, like 2007, 2008, when a financial crisis happened, and then 2014, 2015 were probably, the best years until now, until 2021, 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021, when there was crisis in the marketplace with the pandemic. The housing market was driven by a different structure. In 2014, it had been sat there for 7 years, not a single move, because people had to get their thoughts together. And I assume that that will be the sort of thing that will happen now. Come the end of 2021, 2022, people will, you know, not everyone's going to move again in a hurry. The average time that people move is normally about 5 years, 5 to 6 years. They stay in a place. So the next 4, 3, 4, 5 years, they'll settle and do things. That's not to say that there are not people that are looking still to buy. Not everybody and their uncle bought by the 30th of June 2021. That's not the end of the story. That was just a panic driven situation by the fact that the stamp duty holiday was there, and so people thought, I want to take advantage of that. But just take a look at that for a minute. Stamp duty holidays making a saving. So if you took £30,000 as the growth and they were saving £15,000 for not doing it, that actually is worked out at £45,000.
Yeah.
If you look at it like that, that's nearly a £50,000 increase for those at the higher stamp duty level at the £500,000 basis.
Mm.
But that will change as time goes on. But there are still people in the system that probably couldn't find what they wanted and maybe didn't want to panic buy and maybe just
Mm.
wasn't ready at that time. So yes, they'll pay a penalty because they wouldn't have had to save the stamp duty, and of course the house prices have shot up. But rest
Mm.
assured, they're not going to be in reverse gear, Paul. I've always said housing market has been in neutral and in drive for the 40 years that I've done. So as far as I'm concerned, they'll probably go into neutral for a bit and then we'll have a drive. But if people are sitting there expecting for a massive fall, they need to really rethink their
Mm.
strategy. Because if I
Yeah.
if I could have got a penny for everyone that told me over the last 40 years they've been waiting for house prices to drop, I probably wouldn't be doing this.
The suggestion is, Joe, that a lot of the professional opinion is that financial common sense, financial prudence went out the window in the run up to the 30th of June with a lot of people, and clear those that were a little bit more prudent themselves realised that actually they weren't going to make a saving because the price had already outweighed the saving. So there is a suggestion there is a lot of people who, for two reasons: firstly, were a little bit more prudent maybe, and secondly, couldn't find the right property because we've got such a low level of stock. They're the people that are still sat there on their extra 7,000 that they made during lockdown and all the other money that they might have saved in the run up to now, and they're still waiting for that property, quite happy to pay the full stamp duty because they realise that once prices start to level and they can get the right property, that's the important thing. So there's a suggestion there that there is still plenty of money in the market or interest in the market to keep it at this level. And secondly, of course, as the mortgage rates have uplifted to 95% LTV as opposed to 90 in that competition to get the business, actually you might make a saving in the mortgage deal that you get.
Yeah, I mean, the mortgage deals are amazing, to be honest with you, at this moment in time because it's the lowest the rates have ever been. 95% is there available. There are savings to be made with perhaps new developers because obviously that stock that was selling fast prior to June 30th may have slightly slowed down, so they may offer you a discount. And so the savings that you would have perhaps made on a stamp duty, you might make savings by renegotiating some deals that are maybe available, and new developers may then also, new home developers may actually consider, offering something towards the cost of stamp duty and maybe a reduction and so forth. So there's still things to be done. It's not over, far from it. But I just would continue to reiterate that, never sit back and think, I'm going to wait till tomorrow this happen, because it's just been proven to right in front of you in the year that we've done. Look at what's happened in the housing market in that year, and those prudent people that have gone on stepped on the first run of the housing ladder are going to be sitting there going, okay, that was great. Yes, I understand that there's extra pressure now. There's a mortgage and there's all sorts of other costs that are coming into it. I get that, but at the same time, you know, if you were renting, you're renting it and spending that money on someone else's property. So, bully for the people that actually managed to get there. And I think there's so much more that are going to be coming through. And that ripple effect, don't forget, till the end of September, that you're still on a stamp duty holiday up to
Mm,
£250,000. It's not
mm,
over yet. So,
no.
we still have another month to go. And so anyone that's buying at up to £250,000, there is no stamp duty to have. So there's still savings to be made.
Let's look at it from a political angle just for a second, and we try not to be particularly political on property matters. That's not what we're here for. But isn't it interesting that the stamp duty receipts in July, because obviously you've got 14 days to pay your stamp duty, so from the 30th of June up to the 14th of July. Basically, long and short of it is that they took record amounts of money, 1.3 billion, the highest figure ever in any one month, just 1 month, 1.3 billion in stamp duty. So you can understand why Richie and Boris were more relaxed about not interfering than we thought they'd be.
Yeah, I didn't for 1 minute think to myself that they'd got it wrong. I think they'd absolutely nailed it as far as the stamp duty and the property market is concerned, Paul. It wasn't just about, and it's great that they've got huge receipts, over a billion, 1.3 billion pounds worth of receipts in 1 month. But look what they also did for the economy and the country. And whilst people look at it short term, I saw that coming for ages and said that, it's the other things, the other businesses. You can't hire builders and developers at this moment because they're flat out, because the market is so busy. People that have moved into these homes and done
Mm,
this, and the government's done well because it's picked up, 1.3 billion pounds worth of receipts of stamp duty in July. Um, all of the DIY stores are doing amazing. Most are out of stock, can't
mm,
get the stuff in at this moment in time. Material has gone through the roof. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was telling me that a sheet of ply, which was, I don't know, £12 or £15, is now £30 or £40 a sheet of ply. And so you imagine the material costs have gone up because that, again, there's another supply and demand issue going on. But people are now having their homes done. They are having their gardens, their drives, their decorating, their painting, whatever they need to be doing, new kitchens, bathrooms, etc. So the industry has evolved in a huge way, and that's hence why the government's figures of the economy doing so well are also good. So well done to Rishi and Boris for obviously doing that. They're gonna get stick for lots of other things as well, but I think they managed to keep the property market and the people in their homes happier. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they are smiling with a huge grin on their face for that one.
Here's another aspect to it. So all of that growth in the house price, in the value of your home, that's added in this last year £825 billion to the entire UK privately owned stock. So all the houses privately owned in the UK in the last year, they've grown by £825 billion. That's additional equity which we now have in our UK markets tax free at the moment, as you've got it there, unearned income, but it's also money that you can realise, pay on credit cards, loans, moving home, bigger home again, moving up the ladder, home improvements, holidays, clothes, staycations, call it what you will. And that money ultimately will at some point come back out into the economy.
Well, imagine that huge increase in the equity, and then there has never been a better time to perhaps consider doing a remortgage because the rates are so low, you could actually pull out a huge chunk of money out of that increase of equity and almost redo your property, redo the things that you want to do, go on that staycation holiday, buy a yacht or something and a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and all that kind of stuff that you want to do. Because the interest rate is so low and the remortgages are available. And of course, the equity being the growth gives you your loan to value percentage is much easier. If Bob Singh was here, he'll probably be telling me the numbers and so forth. But I'm just going to generalize that at the end of the day, the reality of it is that there is more of cash in your home at this moment in time, and you should feel happier and proud to know that that's what exists. That takes that phrase of mine, you gauge your wealth by the value of your home, exactly to the point I've always said, because now, you are going to gauge your wealth. You are going to turn around and say, my home is worth another 30, 40, 50,000 pounds, and I've got that comfort to know if I wanted to, for any reason, refinance, take the money out and go and buy myself a car, not have to take a loan on the car, not have to go and do other things. You could save a lot of money. So it's a great place to be and a great, the best time for that to be within. And that's one of the reasons, Paul, United Kingdom is so attractive for people to want to come in and buy their home. Because as an
Mm.
island, we can only go up or we can go down. We really struggle to go out. And no matter how many times you want to do that, we are restricted to how much growth can go out. So we're surrounded by water all around, and so the supply and demand factor always kicks in, and the demand is very, very high. Just imagine of all those people that will start to rush in as soon as the borders are all opened up and we've got all the green lights everywhere, and it will just feel like it just didn't happen.
Yeah. One other last point on this, Joe, which is quite interesting actually, is that just looking at the suggestion is that looking at this in a 1 year scenario at 13.2% is far too short term. Actually, if you stretch this out and look between, for example, the time of the Brexit vote, June 2016 to June 2021, you've got a 5 year period there. The growth over that 5 year period was 25%, or if you like, 5% per year. If you go back further to June 2007 to now, prices rose 42% or 3% an annum. And the suggestion is that although we're going to have probably a bumper year this year, over the period of time, as you've often said, you've still got that steady growth. And the suggestion is, well, what did we expect? We've had 4 years of pent-up demand. People sitting there going, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Brexit, not what's going to happen with the election. And then you've got the stamp duty holiday and the election result, and Brexit seemed at that point to be settling down okay. I know nothing's perfect at the moment, but it seems to be settling down relatively okay. They're not the complete scares that people were fearful of. So it's kind of not surprising. We've had 4 years of people holding on to their money, and now all of a sudden conditions all came together to give us a powder keg, a tinderbox, if you like, of all of this stuff blowing up with low interest rates, high LTVs, not a lot of stock around, and furlough schemes and money confidence. It's not surprising we've had a crazy year.
No, and a welcome one under the circumstances of pandemic. So when you put all of those, things into that Pandora's box about Brexit and the uncertainty and all those things, and then pandemic to add to it, all of a sudden you say to yourself, but having done all of that, and not knowing what that was going to actually look like, what it has done is given confidence and comfort in that time, and bully for the government in that case, that basically, they'll come in and say, we sorted the Brexit out, we got through the pandemic irrespective of all the criticisms that they've got, and we've actually given you a massive great increase in the equity of your home, and we've given you low rates. So it's a win-win situation from a political point of view, from their point of view. But it is also a win-win situation for every homeowner to a large extent, because it's the lowest rate of mortgages they've had. I am fearful that mortgage rates will start to rise, and it's probably the one tool that they will use to actually slow this whole
Mm.
train down. Because if they don't, then at some stage it's going to be beyond control. So watch this space. Give it Christmas 2021 out of the way. Um, the present in 2022 will probably be a hike in the interest rate, and that'll be your brakes, basically saying we've done what we need to do now. So here's how we're going to slow you down. We're just going to increase your monthly payments. And then
Mm.
people go, oh, hang on a minute, I better sit down and sit tight. Forget about that kebab or that takeaway that I was doing twice a week. It's got to go down to once a week now. So it will change.
Watch out for those Deliveroos.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were talking about buy-to-lets, and should we get into residential buy-to-let? Should we get into commercial? Last week, you may recall, Joe, and
Mm.
this week the NRLA, the National Residential Landlords Association, produced their new findings. A wide-ranging survey of private landlords across England and Wales. And they found that 39% confirmed that demand for housing for rent had increased in the second quarter of this year, an 8% increase on the first quarter. But they're talking about the fact that it's at a 5-year high, but it's very much a two-tier market. So these places where the prices have risen, such as the places we've mentioned already, Yorkshire, Humber, Wales, Southwest, Southeast, 60% of landlords said that the demand for homes to rent had increased. In stark contrast, 15% of landlords in central London said demand had increased in the second quarter of the year, whereas 53% said that it actually had, in fact, fallen. So we can see a two-tier system at the moment, and we've talked about the capital a lot. But interestingly, despite this good news, a lot of landlords are thinking still of getting out because they're talking about the taxation being just so punitive. So growing numbers of tenants looking to leave London, overall increase in demand, the proportion of landlords intending to buy property has fallen from a 4-year high of 19% in the first quarter of the year to 14%, and the proportion looking to get rid of stock has risen to 20%, up 3 points from the first quarter. So the demand for rental housing, I can't quite square this off. Demand has actually gone up for housing, and yet more and more landlords seem to be wanting to get out.
There's a section of landlords that will probably want to get out, Paul, and that's part of restructuring. And there's a section of landlords that have not actually got into the market yet. That's the kind of the next generation. So you'll find that, and we come across that there's a certain section of landlords where they've had a huge stock for a long, long time in their life, age factors are kicking in, their personal circumstances, taxation policies, etc., are making them think, well, actually, you know what, we need to sort of cull and get out, or get out and hold some of the stock into a limited company, restructure our plans and so forth. And those are the statistics that will tell you that people want to come out. And that's an age thing. So you imagine those that are, sort of retirement age, or come to a point where they just don't need to have the hassle of having all those properties to manage and deal, they will come out. The new ones are not quite there yet because the next generation are challenging just the ownership first starters, and then of course the buy to let schemes are available. Maybe doesn't allow them to expand, but we are getting experience from younger people that are coming into that and can see that if they had a portfolio of 10 to 15 properties that they can rent out, it actually can give them a good lifestyle and good income, and potentially a job for life because they're going to manage that. So it's a bit of an evolution. The outgoing of the old and slow incoming of the new, perhaps, is probably the easiest way to describe that. But as soon as things settle down through past the pandemic, and people think that there is a ease in the market and it's not growing as fast as it has done for the last year or so, then there will be a bigger uptake on buy to lets, because there are still going to be generations of people and people coming back into the country that cannot and will not be able to afford to go and buy straight away. So the rental market and the demand will continue. But I think that moment, the stock that is being moved around is because of personal circumstances and also the newness. There's a lot of old stock, Paul, and to be honest with you, landlords sometimes are so lazy in updating them, and the next generation are not interested in old properties. They want
Mm.
modern boxes straight, and that's why we're building hundreds and thousands of blocks of flats, because the next lot don't want to have gardens and issues. They just want to sit in their box and play whatever box games they play and whatever they do. So, so they, you can see I'm getting old in that one. So yeah, so I think those are the changes that are coming, and they may not convert into your statistic numbers, but that's the story on the ground.
Sure. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Allotments could provide space to build 600,000 new homes. Should it ever come to pass, Joe, there'd probably be national riots, I would imagine, if that was the case. But it's an interesting point being made here, and I just want to explore this with you a little bit, if I may. So, Get Agent's research found that an estimated 4,554 allotments across the nation equates to roughly 177,500 plots, each with an average size of 250 square metres. That gives you 44.5 million square metres of allotment space, enough to build 604,000 new homes based on the average size of a property of 73.5 square metres. So that's given you, based on the average price currently at £348,000, roughly around £210 billion worth of new homes. So that would certainly go a long, long way to solving our housing crisis. London is the greatest level of allotment new build potential, with over 7 million square feet, which is really what's so very interesting about this. So there's London at the top of the chart there, 720 allotment sites, and potential value of new build homes, £50 billion just in the capital alone. But you've got Hertfordshire there, West Midlands, Tyne and Wear, Surrey, Greater Manchester, Essex, Devon, Kent. So these are Bristol, Durham, Hampshire, Worcestershire, Leicestershire, West Sussex. These are nice areas of the country, and so premium land. But in the city, you could see in the actual city of London, there's 9,750 square metres, which could even put 133 new homes in the city of London, in the old city, which is quite something. I can imagine the price of those when they finally get out, if they were ever built. But I mean, the story here is that Get Agent have clearly put a story together to create a headline. And actually what they're saying is no one's suggesting for 1 minute that they should build on those homes, but on those allotments rather. But the fact of the matter is that nothing else is being done about anything else. And there's plenty of other sites, like the brownfield sites, wrongly classified green belt sites, for example. No one's doing anything about trying to find or free up the land, as you've said before. And unless we pull our finger out, none of it's going to be of use to anybody. So you might as well build on the allotments as build anywhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting that, Paul. First of all, I think that there's plenty in every council's cupboard, which they can reutilize and recirculate and get back into the useful stock of property. Second part is that I can't imagine in my wildest of dreams that the allotments will be something that they'll do. Having said that, 10, 15 years down the road, the people that use the allotments are probably not going to be around. And so somewhere along the line, those allotments will find a developer or development, and some of that building will happen. The reason why it won't happen in a hurry is because whilst we are continuously having this race for every consecutive government to come in and build more homes for the desperate need of all those, it is equally important for them not to build those homes. So it's a good cry, it's a good story. They stand on the ballot box and tell them that that's what they're going to do next year, and they swear blind they're going to do it. But actually, it pays them not to do it, because when you look at the house prices increase and the business it generates for the country, the economy, and so forth. If this was a perfect world and they had beaten all their targets and built every home as this survey has shown on the allotments and brought in everything into line, how boring is it going to be? I mean, there's nothing to talk about then, isn't it? It's all perfect. Nobody wants to come here. Nobody
Well, the
wants to deal with
suggestion is,
that.
Joe, that actually, if you did actually meet the targets and there was homes for everybody, then actually house prices would literally fall.
And that's the reason why I'm saying they don't want that to happen,
Mm.
because ultimately, this whole subject of property matters. We will, I'll be out of a job.
I'm
How can
sure
that
that's not
be?
going to happen anytime soon. Interesting point they also make, of course, is that these allotments are places where people unwind, they relax, they
Yeah,
socialise, and in that respect, they're far more valuable than any buildings.
I've seen people nurture those allotments. We have them around where are. But this is it's like a sanctuary. It's like a chap said to me yesterday. I still believe I should have a shed at the bottom of my garden built for my domain. You know, because when the woman at home is giving him earache, he can go to the shed. And so the allotments have done that for years, haven't they? The fellas have all ended up nurturing their potatoes and whatever it is, and gives them that peace of mind and country air. And even though they're sitting in the middle of London sometimes, it's that space that they is their own. I can't imagine my wildest dream that that's going to happen. But having said that, as I said, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, when maybe we're not around, somebody will come along and say, well, that's what it is, because nobody's now using those people aren't there. So I strongly urge all those youngsters that are living in boxes to go and make sure that you take over your granddad's or your grandma's allotment and continue to nurture them if you don't want them built on in your lifetime. And that's for you to protect your lifetime, because somebody will build on them at some stage. And
Mm.
but I'm pretty certain, in my sort of layman terms and life and experience, that they're never going to make these targets. They don't want to make these targets. They talk the talk, but definitely don't want to walk the walk in this case. Because as far as I'm concerned, as you rightly say, if everybody was comfortable, everything was a level playing field, everyone had a home to go to, there was none of this happening, then yeah, house prices could start to fall. There might be a few people that are right to do that, but let me put you at ease. It ain't going to happen.
We've often talked about the difficulty of getting that first foot on the ladder. As a company that has been investigated by This Is Money website. Well, not investigated in the sense that they're not doing anything right or wrong, but just looking into the detail of what they call gradual home ownership, which is not a phrase I'd heard before, Joe. So, and I know this isn't necessarily a new thing to the market, but this is a new version of that, really, which is they're on a mission, apparently, this company, Way Home, to reinvent the home ownership. They've got 500 million in the pot from pension funds. And what they're doing is getting first-time buyer customers to borrow up to 8 times their household income, to therefore avoid the usual starter home boxes for first-time buyers, maybe get something bigger so they don't have to move so often in a desirable neighbourhood where they could stay for longer, that's more suited to their lifestyle or family situation. These customers mostly have limited cash assets and incomes, so they have to be able to get a traditional. They might not be able to get a traditional mortgage, but they need to get the 5% deposit nonetheless. And they buy their 5% of a chosen property with that cash, and then they partner through Way Home with institutionalized funding investors. So they buy the other 95%, and then you pay rent for the other 95, and you've got your 5% growing there. You can buy up to 5% more every year, up to 40%, and you need a household income of at least 30,000 to be able to do this. So it looks on the basis as quite a good idea, but there are a few caveats here. Firstly, with the stamp duty, you're going to be paying 3% because you're effectively in a limited liability partnership. You're on an LLP, so you're going to have to pay the 3%, which is obviously going to be higher. There are quite a lot of fees involved of getting out of it. You can at any point you decide to go out, you pay the fees that are due. And obviously, if you buy more chunks, say a percent a year, you still got to pay your 3% stamp duty on that each year as well. and you can't update the kitchen, you can't extend, but you can decorate. So it might suit some people, but I think it's one of these things where you really have to read the small print very, very carefully. But on the face of it, looks like quite a good idea.
Yeah, it's just a different version of the same thing, Paul. Share ownership has existed forever and a day through housing associations. Governments provided the funds for the housing associations to build certain properties, and they've also provided the funds for them to buy the Section 106 from new developers. It's their proportion of affordable housing, whether it's affordable via renting or affordable via share ownership or some sort of rental scheme that they could do. It appears that this is a bit of a different version of it. It's just by saying that they can buy small portions, a higher percentage. It's just probably presented in a completely different way, but the end result is pretty much the same. The problem is that they don't always allow you to buy 100%. If they do, you're paying a market rate, and the question is, you've then almost doubled your exposure because you've been buying through its life up to a certain percentage, and then you want to buy the rest of it, and then that's at a market rate. And actually, it's probably easier to sometimes just sell your total and then start afresh again, because at least you're going to get a better value for money home. But like you say, some people will take it on the basis that it's a long-term home. Circumstances may mean that they can't have 100%, so they'll take up to 5%, 10%, 15, 20%, whatever that amount they would be over the period. I think something like 40 or 50% is probably the level that they'll allow them to buy. I have dealt with housing associations and people that want to buy the 100%, but it just means that they then calculate it on the whole market value as opposed to a proportion of the housing market. At the end of the day, the housing association, whilst they are created for a non-profit enterprise, their staff and their CEOs take a fairly hefty consultancy fee in order to do that. So there's always more than one way to skin a cat. So yes, it's non-for-profit, but because it's not, but then they've been paid big money to run it and make it happen, then the profit is going through the salaries and consultancies and IT and all the other things that they can and cannot probably put through. So I don't think there's is huge issue in terms of the structure. It is a good way for people to get a chance to start their journey on the first rung of the ladder, of the property ladder. I'm not saying, and I don't think it's an expensive way, but fortunately at this moment in time, with the interest rates low as they are and the opportunity to have help to buy schemes and 95% mortgages, the chances are there are better deals and better opportunities for you to own 100% as opposed to buying only the few percent that you can through a social housing or a housing association possibility. They may change the schemes, there might be varying schemes, but I think that what they've done is kind of staircase themselves up by saying, oh, you can have a bit here and a bit there every so often you can buy. But just remember, even if they are buying, 2, 3, 4, 5% and 1%, the house prices that have been increasing at the levels that we've talked about earlier in the show will tell you that they've got no risk factor, because even if they are buying it, 1 or 2%, in terms of the share of the value of the balance is still going up much, much higher. And wouldn't you want to be part of that whole share as opposed to being share part of a 2 or 3%? So it's just a different way to present a scheme that exists already.
Yeah. The company operates an early buyout period, so you can get out between 5 and 10 years. If they want to buy the home in full during that time, they will need to repay the cost of the legal fees and the survey costs, etc. And if they wish to leave the home, the investors have 3 months to decide whether to buy out the resident or put the property up for sale. Either way, you pay a £350 valuation. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's quite a few caveats that you need to investigate and read the small print, but it may work for some people. But I suppose the point being that we really do seriously need some wise thinking an intelligent, if that's the right word, government think tank on how to get around this crisis would be a really useful and welcome addition for first time buyers, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think think tanks have existed forever a day, and every time they come up with a scheme, but unfortunately, supply and demand starts to push them out. I mean, here we are. The government came up with a no stamp duty period, and it wasn't just all designed for the first time buyers, though that was the whole idea. Let's get them on there. But it also gave everybody else, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, the opportunity to think, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to save money here. I'll get onto it. So it pushes the whole structure. If there was just a scheme set out for first time buyers, yes, in new homes that could happen. And maybe they should run something for first time buyers specifically at a low rate, at run of the ladder, and with the developers. And even some of the stuff that they've been doing with developers, with these schemes that they have with help to buy schemes. The developer has to kind of put some of his money into the pot. The government put some of their money in the pot. So not everybody wants to lock their capital into these schemes, whilst they're attractive from a moral point of view, if you want to call it. We're helping the first-time buyers. From a business point of view, they actually don't make eminent sense because if you were a developer under the Help to Buy scheme, you are asked to put 10% of your profit potentially into a scheme for somebody to be able to buy that and lock it for the next 5 years. And you might need that money now. It's not that attractive. 10% is 10%. I mean, if you look at a gross development of something, and it's £3 or £4 million, 10% of that is £400,000. So it's like a big chunk of your money that it could be part of your profit. You're actually going to still leave in the scheme in order to try and assist the government to do what they want to do. So on paper and on the face of it, they always look great, but actually when it comes to reality, they don't always give you the answers that you're looking for.
I'm going to take you back to your heyday, Joe, your nightclubbing days, which of course are infamous around the region of South London. And we've got a little property here in Salop Street in Wolverhampton, which I wouldn't be surprised you didn't frequent many years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had the white suit on and did my strut, staying alive, and John Travolta days in such venues, but this one was not one of the ones I strutted my stuff in. This is a property in Wolverhampton, which got 7 lettable rooms and an apartment upstairs, and of course you can see the funky pictures there with the nightclub. What really drives me crazy about these places, they look amazing at night when they're lit up like this, but it's when you sort of turn up in the daytime and you think, my God, is that really what I was in last night? And they're just quite shoddy. But I suppose a few vodka and Diet Cokes kind of makes you see things slightly differently. But Salop Street, very good investment opportunity. It's a nightclub. It's got late license till 2 o'clock. And some days I think it's even up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a property with the club and some basement and then upstairs accommodation. Actually in a nice spot. It's right in the heart of the town centre in Wolverhampton, and literally across the road is I think a £55 million project going on for leisure. So there's going to be cinemas and all sorts of stuff going there. So great opportunity for an investor, great opportunity for someone who doesn't want to have a nightclub, and maybe under planning laws might be able to get the change of use to turn the downstairs into some more apartments. Great opportunity, £300,000 buys it, really, the north of that, and it's an auction next week.
Lovely. And finally, Joe, the rental flat that's so small, there's no room for a bed. This is on Open Rent, which advertises properties, your rental properties, on Rightmove, Zoopla, and other websites for just £29, apparently. They caught the eye of the national media this week in the Sun newspaper under the headline, "Tight Squeeze, One-Bedroom Flat." And here it is on Rightmove. This is the property that you pay £700 a month for. You can see the sofa bed there. Well, I actually don't think it's even a sofa bed, is it? It just looks like a sofa to me. But you might be able to extend that out. I'm not sure. But you've got the kitchen over the far corner there on the right, with actually even got an extractor hood, would you believe? And you've got a microwave with a couple of hot plates on the top, and you've got that extractor there. And the bathroom, I think, is just behind where the camera is. Which takes you through to this tiny little shower room. So that's your £700 a month, but obviously it's in Finchley Road, NW3, so you're paying for the address there, Joe.
Oh yeah, it's always about location, 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 and so yeah, this is a typical example, but £700 a month is, if that's to include the bills and so forth, it's probably not such a bad thing, but if it's to add the bills on top, that's a tight squeeze. As an agent, we would probably have described that as a surprisingly spacious.
Well, I'll tell you what they did. Hilariously, this is why it came to the attention of the newspapers. Was they called it medium sized.
Yeah, well, there you are. See, it's
optimistic to say the least.
Surprisingly spacious. It just depends. Spacious for who? The cat, the dog, or the human being? I'm not sure, but
well, that's it.
It's always, but London's like this. You see, I mean, if you can buy a garage for £150,000 and stick a car in there, here is a medium-sized apartment in Hampstead. Very, very difficult to swing a cat in that one, but yeah, nothing surprises me, Paul. It's property.
Yeah. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner where it says the 700 per month, you can see they've just added their let agreed. So somebody's taken the place already. So I'm sure they're very grateful of the national publicity.
Well, it's a stepping stone, isn't it? Literally, you just step in and step onto the couch, I suppose. And then if that couch is opened, there's nothing to step on. You just got to lie there. But that's the way it is.
And it's our time to step off, I'm afraid, Joe. That's all we have time for this week. Hopefully that's provided some lively, thought-provoking content for you to enjoy this Sunday. We'll be back, of course, next week with another Property Matters at 10 o'clock. We'll see you then.